Addiction podcast. It gives me great pleasure to invite Brian Lim to the show, host of the Building Pickleball podcast. I absolutely love Brian's podcast. He has a voice for podcasts and not in a rude way. Has guests, great guests, and in general, he's just really good to listen to. Welcome, Brian.
Hey, thanks for having me, Mark.
So, you're out of Austin, right?
Yep.
And thanks for getting up so early to join us on the show. It's like 7:15 now, your time.
Yeah. No sweat, man. I know what it's like to try and book guests and to do this podcast thing. So happy to just make the right arrangements to make it happen. And also, you're in the UK, so thank you for taking the time to do this as well.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, I mean, I say a long-term listener of your podcast. Your podcast hasn't been around like years and years and years or anything like that. But I mean, I listen to it all the time. But for people that haven't listened to your podcast yet, hopefully just go subscribe and they will after this. But tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so if I date just back to pickleball, just to give like a frame of reference for the podcast, I got into pickleball in 2020, was playing pretty consistently, and then came out with a podcast about 10 or 11 months ago. And it started off as a general curiosity for founders in the space and their stories. I think a lot of that came from my own dad was an entrepreneur, and then just being curious about those stories. And I also, of course, I listened to podcasts like How I Built This, and always been fascinated by stories, especially after reading like Steve Jobs' biography about Walter Isaacson. And so often we get to see the final product or the finished product or this like persona that's just conveyed through media, but rarely do we get to hear from the person themselves. Rarely do we get to hear like why they started things, what challenges do they face. And also, like, in some ways I did it selfishly for myself because I knew I wanted to start a business. So how could I get some of that information? And in a sense, I went indirect, like it was kind of like an accident, but I went directly to the source and also made a lot of friends along the way. So just wanted to share their stories that they had. I knew that there's definitely some like interesting people in the space. And then now it's opened up to not just founders, but maybe people that work for certain brands like Carl Schmitz from USA Pickleball, players. I had Rob Nunnery, much like you had Rob Nunnery as well. I've had different players, and I'll continue down that avenue as well. But yeah.
I totally agree. Like, it's exactly why I started doing an interview-based podcast as well, because people's stories are interesting. What people are doing in pickleball is interesting. Like, you don't always get to hear what people are doing, and I think for me that kind of makes for the most interesting kind of podcasts. And I was just telling you before the show, like when yours comes on, that's the one I download. Like a lot of the other podcasts I listen to are like all news-based, and they're all kind of they're covering the same news in a different way. But I really love getting behind the scenes and listening to those stories. So thanks for what you do. Like, I really appreciate listening to the interviews.
Oh man, thanks for watching.
So you're a former MMA fighter, pastry cook, and UX designer, and now you're in pickleball. So that's quite a mix. Like, tell us how you got down that road.
Gosh, yeah, I never really know how to answer this question because it all just kind of happens. I guess I'm just I don't even really know, like just a very goal-oriented guy. And I was just it's actually like probably a flaw of mine. But anyways, I got into jiu-jitsu first. I used to watch fights back in the day all the time with my brother. We watched K1, Pride, and those are some of the older organizations. And then during college, I got into jiu-jitsu, found a local gym, and the goal was always to eventually be a professional MMA fighter. The aspirations, very lofty goal and dream, was to get into the UFC. But I started off with jiu-jitsu first, found a coach. His name is Tim Mannon, and it was right by my school, this university, very small school, and he actually had a career as a professional MMA fighter. So I knew, like, okay, as long as I like start doing jiu-jitsu, then I can pick up MMA from him as well. And I told him my like goals, and he said, okay, let's build you up a base first. So I want you to get your blue belt in jiu-jitsu, and then we could talk about fighting. So that's like the only thing on my mind at the time. And got my blue belt, had 2 fights. I think my first fight ended in like 30 seconds or something like that. My second fight, that may have gone to the second round, or it was just like a minute and a half or something. This is just bad memory, not caused by concussions, but I've just always had bad memory. Um, and then just kind of like fast forward, I moved back home. I graduated, and I took about like 4 years off fighting because I was trying to figure out what do I want to do with my life. And I made the mistake that a lot of other people make, and they just try to follow society and what they tell you to do, and try to almost listen to too many of your peers rather than listening to yourself. So I got into sales. I tried to do that. Just didn't really go well. That's just not my vibe. I got into customer support. Grateful for that experience. Grateful for both the experiences. They tell me a lot, but um, I took a very long road to get to where I'm at now. And anyways, I did fighting. I got back into it around the time that my dad passed away in an accident. And I just felt like I needed to, like not let him die in vain. And I don't think that anyone really should. I think if someone close to you and meaningful to you passes away, it should alter your life. It should change your life for the better. And that's what happened to me. And I pursued fighting again, and I went 8-2 as an amateur and had my one pro fight. During my amateur, I was like the number 1 featherweight in the state of Virginia, and I held 3 titles. And then I went pro and fought in the Baltimore Royal Farms Arena. I lost the match by a split decision, but I got to fight on the same card as the guy that I was training with. His name's Cisco Asada. And, I was with my new coach at the time, Greg Souders of Standard Jiu-Jitsu. And it's just like this incredible experience. And I had like a great time. All my friends and family were there. I just couldn't believe that many people actually cared about what I was doing at the time. And it just felt like a weight was lifted off my shoulders. So I felt like, okay, like I did it in some sense. I got further than I expected, but not as far as I wanted. And I was okay with that. And I was like ready to just hang it up. It's also just very overwhelming. I think it's difficult to say, but I don't know if I'm cut out to be a fighter. It's just very, very hard. Yeah, I won't go into the details, but it's a very, very difficult journey. So then I was like pretty lost. It was like pretty depressing at that time because I didn't know what to do with my life. I had done that for 3 or 4 years. And when you're doing that, you're isolated. You're not doing anything else. If you care about your career, you're not doing anything else. I didn't hang out with people that often. I, just really isolated myself. I wasn't great at dating. Any relationship I was in was just secondary to fighting. Everything was secondary to fighting. So then I decided to move to Austin, and then again, trying to start back from square one, and got into a customer support role. Then I got into baking. Baking was just another avenue and outlet for creativity. Always been creative. I remember like back in the day when I would play with action figures, we just wouldn't go to the toy store to buy certain things. My parents also thought it was like ridiculous that I was into wrestling. So I'm talking about like WWE and like fake wrestling. So I would like draw like championship title belts, and I would like cut them out and then put them on my action figures and stuff like that. So it's like always been creative guy, like drawing, and just like introverted, kind of kept to myself and just like made up like stories. But yeah, and then got into pickleball. And this is a very, I don't know if I'm going on a tangent at this point, but yeah, into pickleball, and I'll kind of let you run with the next questions from there.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I mean, I can imagine that being a fighter is a tough journey, and I wouldn't even consider doing it. So you did. So it's not. Yeah, I can't even imagine how tough that is, getting punched in the face yeah, on a regular basis. So
Yeah.
but on to pickleball then. So when did you know that you? Well, okay. First of all, like when did you first take up pickleball? Hi, Mark Mars here. I hope you're enjoying the show. This podcast is sponsored in part by the Pickleball Addiction store and newsletter. To support the show, please check out the Pickleball Addiction store at pickleballaddiction.co, where we stock a wide range of paddles, balls, nets, and other accessories. Use coupon code POD10, that's POD10, to get 10% off your first purchase. You can also check out the Pickleball Addiction newsletter at pickleballaddiction.news, where we cover the latest news in pickleball from the UK and around the world. Thanks for your support, and now back to the show.
2020, I don't know if it was necessarily because of COVID. It was actually, I was going on a trip. So I actually lived down the street from courts here, a very popular courts called the PanAm Courts. Always drive by it, never knew what those people were doing, and it just never occurred to me. And then my friend invited me on a trip to his house in Mexico in Chacala. It's about 45 minutes north of Puerto Vallarta. And he had some community courts there. And he always talked about it. And he's like, dude, I'm going to introduce you to pickleball. As soon as I saw it, I was like, oh, I'm totally in. As soon as I played, I was terrible. But I was like, oh, I'm definitely going to get into this. Because I until then, up until then, I hadn't found anything that was maybe not comparable to jiu-jitsu or MMA, but just something that was physical, something that required strategy, something that allowed me to socialize and make friends, something that had, just a physical component, and just like something that allowed me to focus my attention on other than work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It does cover quite a lot. There is something about it. It does cover lots of different aspects compared to like other sports even. I mean, have you done the other racket sports in the past before that?
No, my dad tried to get me into tennis and ping pong, and it just never clicked. So I was just never clicked.
Yeah. I had this. I can't even remember. I'm repeating myself from a different podcast now. But like when I was a kid, I played some tennis. Like when I was really young, just with over the park, like with some friends, and I was pretty good at it. Like just off the bat, like naturally. And but I never like followed it through. Never carried on. And then so I've always looked back and gone, oh, I could have probably been pretty good at tennis if I just stuck to it, But then when pickleball came along, I was like, oh, now I can maybe live my dream again. I can do that. But then I realized that had I carried on with tennis, I'd be way better at pickleball. So it's kind of gone full circle. It's actually, I thought I was going to be able to rediscover something I didn't get, and actually, all the tennis players are the better players. So,
yeah, right.
So when did you know you wanted to do something more than just play in pickleball?
I think that's always happened to me. Anytime I participate in something, I'm always I never just want to watch. I never just want to be just like a bystander. I always want to take part in something. And for pickleball, I was like, this is exciting. And not only that, but I actually genuinely am interested in pickleball, and I really, really enjoy playing. So if I enjoy it, if I love doing it, and I'm genuinely interested and I have genuine curiosity for it, then why not pursue it in some fashion? And there's also a combination of a lot of things, right? One, did I see a deficiency, or was what I am pursuing absent in the industry itself? And in a way it was. There are probably people doing podcast interviews, but how were they in terms of their quality and the expectations that I have? There wasn't really anything I was listening to personally. And then it also came around this time where I got laid off I guess I was given the decision to quit and take severance or be laid off. And it was from this company where I was traveling at the time, got a call from my coworker, or text from my coworker. And he said, hey, are you in the meeting right now? And I was like, no, I'm not. What's going on? And he's like, oh, do you want the good news, or do you want the news now or later? And I was just like, yeah, just give it to me now. And he's just like, yeah, they're shutting down the tech hub in Austin. And this is where I was a UX designer at the time. And which actually, now that I look back, it's not that far. It's not that long ago at all. This was back in February. And yeah, I was just like, cool. I will take the severance and just pursue my own thing. So it was at a time where I was, I just didn't feel fulfilled with what I was doing. So I was like, it's time to just take the gamble, take the chance, and this, pursue some idea that I have. And when I saw the thing with pickleball, it wasn't just podcast interviews. I saw that a lot of the design and the aesthetic of pickleball wasn't something that I'm particularly fond of. And I was like, okay, there's definitely an opportunity there as well. So like, okay, so these things are coming naturally to me of what I want to do. And not only is it like natural to me, but it's also absent from the space. So I was
Yeah.
like, okay, cool. Like, well, I'm not going to repeat anything that anyone's already doing in a sense. So why not just pursue it? Um, so yeah, just gave it a shot. And then because I had that like epiphany or realization, I also wanted to make a big change in my life. And that just comes down to who would, who would this force me to become, like pursuing this journey. And I just knew I had to try that because I was like, I don't know if what I'm doing right now is going to turn me into a person that I am proud of in the future. And that was just
Hmm.
like working for someone else and, you know, just grinding through every week without any real purpose or fulfillment.
Yeah. Yeah. So you don't have a day job right now. You're working full time in doing pickleball stuff.
Yeah, this is my day job now, YouTube content creation, and then pursuing like, I wouldn't call it filmmaking, probably more like videography and photography and just a little bit of everything. Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that then, the videography and those kind of things. Is that's is that for other uh, media outlets like you're creating content for? Like, what is that?
Yeah. So even throughout this journey that I started, like, yeah, I was like, the original plan is to become like a YouTube content creator. But along this journey, I've also learned about like cameras and equipment and also how to develop my style on YouTube. Because that's what appealed to me about YouTube in the first place, right? It's like, how engaging can this content be? How fun and creative can people be? That's really what drew me to YouTube and what I wanted to pursue. So yeah, I just like find videos on YouTube of people doing like cinematic filmmaking, like what makes a video, how do you make something cinematic or like
Yeah.
cinematography? It's the lens, it's the lighting, it's the angles, it's the composition, it's all these like fascinating things. Because actually another like weird like fun fact is that when I was younger I always wanted to be an actor. And you could like ask my brother and my family members, this just so ridiculous, but I wanted to be an actor. So now I've always had that curiosity. Like, if people always ask me like what shows you're watching, and I'm always like, I don't watch a lot of shows, but I watch a lot of movies. Always been more into movies. So just learning about all that stuff and like how I can apply that. But I think your question was like, am I doing that for, am I essentially like freelancing? Not yet. I've been asked for some opportunities, but I think right now I have to say no because I'm in a period of like, I'm more at the point where I'm at right now, I'm more focused on growth. And I just have to be better. And I don't think it wouldn't be fair for me to accept a role for someone else who's paying me for
Hmm.
experience that I don't necessarily feel like I have at the moment.
Yeah. Okay. Makes sense. You know what? I was looking at the production level the other day, just on your gear, when you interviewed the founder of Gearbox, and I think that was during the solar eclipse as well. So it was like a little bit darker, but you had some good lighting going on. And I just thought, man, the production is like, because you had two cameras, right? One on him, one on you, like, and yeah, it's so simple, right? Just an interview, but like the way that you put it together, it made it really engaging, and that makes sense why.
It's great to hear, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, like that's another thing. Like, you know, like a lot of podcasts and interviews, I don't really see that happening to a degree, at least the in person, right? Um, and again, goes back to who would it force me to become? Like I'd have to buy these cameras. I remember the first time I picked up a camera, I had no idea what ISO, shutter, and aperture and all those things were. It's just so intimidating to have to go
Yeah.
into like a menu screen. But yeah, like it's just it's all an enjoyable part of the journey.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. So let's stay with the podcast for now then. So, you know, can you share some of like the most like interesting discussions you've had on your podcast, or the guests you've had? I mean, obviously we don't upset the other people, but like, you know, what have you found like interesting when you've spoken to people? If you can share some of those moments that are memorable for you.
Yeah, interesting stuff. I think the interesting stuff is when you can hear things like retroactively. I don't know if I'm describing that right. Like, I think something that's always interesting is like one example is when I had Pickleball Will on, and he's telling me about like stories about Chris Olson Pickleball Studio and just like
Yeah.
how he got 3-5 at best. It's like these hilarious stories that you hear from like that happened, in the past, but like what is the backstory behind why those things came about? So hearing that, and like Dale Young from 6-0, of course, he's got a very interesting background coming from spending 10 years in Africa building um, water wells and helping build that infrastructure. And now he's got arguably the most innovative and most sought after paddle gear right now. And to be able to do that against legacy brands and also
Mhm.
brands that are funded with a lot more money is incredibly it's just incredibly interesting because it's
Mhm.
so understated and overlooked how difficult that is to do, to not only not have the funding but also to say no to outside investors.
Mhm.
And that's just such a commendable trait that I think people overlook. Like, that's the magic of pickleball, right? Is because we don't have massive corporations in the industry yet that are trying to that can take over. Like, why is Vatic Pro? Why is 6-0? Why are these smaller brands? Why are their paddles more seen on the pickleball courts than some of these bigger brands? And
Mhm.
not to say that there's anything particularly wrong with them, these bigger brands, but when they start thinking that they can use money and their big pockets to purchase this magic, if you will, that these smaller brands have, it's just the wrong way to go about it. As soon as you start taking money from the machine, then that magic disappears. And so I say this to say that, like, it's a very commendable trait, and I hats off to these guys for not giving in and not selling their soul in a way, and like believing that what they provide and offer to the community is sustainable over a long period of time. um, So yeah, back to it. Like Daryl Wang from Vatic Pro, very interesting story. Like 25-year-old kid, right? Like had a competitive swimming background, and then his dad is in manufacturing. Now he got into pickleball, but not just that. Like, how did he find his niche? He found his niche by providing people with a superior product, a high quality product at a very affordable price. That, again, like, to take hit on margins, you can call it what you want, that maybe he's like undercutting people, or what he's doing right now isn't going to be sustainable long term.
Mhm.
But he broke he broke a barrier in the system of pickleball. I can't say people shouldn't be paying over $200, but people should question whether what they're paying for is equivalent to the value that is being projected. And I don't
Yeah.
think that it is. And it's the fact that pickleball is in its nascent stage or infancy, and people are taking advantage of that, is not great for the long-term vision of the sport. But for the people that are providing opportunities and value for that is equivalent to what it kind of should be, that is what we should be like praising and looking for, is people who are helping grow the sport by not taking advantage of people. So I think like, yeah, sorry, back to the stories and interesting people. Yeah, I think he's like, that guy's very interesting. I've had Steve Kuhn, who's, God, at the point we are at now in the sport, I say that guy because people always talk about how he's like this god, right? And or just someone who deserves a lot of praise. And I actually do agree with that, because he has this, like, he had a vision and now he's been driven out. And I think that can go back to that thing about money, is when you start taking money from outside investors, they don't have the vision that you have. They tried to buy your vision. And what it ultimately led to is you being driven out of your own product, your own baby. Like, that's what he created, and he created something great. And there are faults of, like, maybe he doesn't know how to generate revenue for what he created. And that is, of course, a very big concern. But there could have been different ways that could have been addressed. Chris Olsen, of course, he has a background speed cubing, and he was the director of the DP, which I believe is director of photography for a Netflix documentary, Speed Cubers. Like, one of his channel has 88,000 subscribers. And then not only that, he has another channel, a YouTube channel that has like 12,000 or 20,000. It's on like video editing, and I think photo editing. It's kind of like a educational piece. And then now, of course, he is the most accredited and sought after paddle reviewers. Who he has an incredible story. I know I'm going on with this, but
that's great.
Essentially, it all comes down to like authenticity. And Chris is another one of those guys who is authentic and he sticks to his guns. He has not taken money from outside people who are trying to buy what he has. And to say no to that, again, comes down to when you're offered six figures and you can do the exact same thing you're doing, but you still feel like there's something wrong with that. And you don't have to tell people this stuff. You can do it behind the scenes. But Chris is not doing that. He's not taking that money. He's continuing to do exactly what he's doing. And he just believes in what he's doing. And it's like this idea of delayed gratification, right? We can't see the final product right now, but to be able to continue that path and forge your own path without being able to see the result right now is, again, a very like commendable like trait, and it's not easy to do at all. But yeah, sorry, I feel like that was my soapbox.
Honestly, that was really good and really interesting. And you always joke on your podcast about you can't get through an episode without mentioning Chris Olsen, and I was wondering whether you'd get through that episode with me without mentioning Chris Olsen, and you failed. You didn't.
Now it's like leaking over to other podcasts. Yeah, there you go, Chris. Sorry about
that. No, I was kind of waiting for it. So I was going to mention it at the end if you didn't come up. So excellent. No, that was great. Yeah, some great people there, and like definitely really interesting stories. And especially with Steve Kuhn, like when you interviewed him to compare to like what's happened now, it's really interesting to kind of see, how that all transpired. And yeah, obviously Chris is fantastic. He's a great host as well of his podcast. So, and Will as well. They're a great team.
Yeah, their podcast is great. It's of all the like recaps, they just seem the most genuine. It doesn't seem like they're trying to clickbait people or create highlights that like create sensationalism or anything like that. So yeah, I really enjoy it. It's great to see just not average, but they act average. They don't act out of they don't act like they're too big for this world, right? They just seem like genuine, like everyday people who just want to have a good conversation for like anyone who missed nationals or anyone who missed the news, and they have, I like their takes and their perspectives on stuff too.
There you go. They even act 3.5 at best.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah. Okay. So, what do you enjoy most then about running the podcast? I guess we might have been covering this. Like you had like an expectation of like what you wanted to do going into it. Like with the reality, like, is there anything that's come out of that and you think, actually, I didn't expect that, but I love that this has happened?
I think the editing has now become a little bit redundant, and I just have to find a way to make that not so redundant and interesting. I think it's just another good challenge. Something that I do enjoy is setting up the studio. And at this point, I'm pretty much only looking to do in-person interviews because like if we had this conversation in person, it really would be completely different. Like there's just, you can't simulate the energy that people have when they're in physical presence. So I do really enjoy like setting up a studio, setting up the lighting, like getting the cameras working. There's always a chance that something's going to mess up, but it's always like this constant, like, how can I make this more engaging? How can I make this more interesting? I think one thing that I learned from a friend, her name is Pamela. She was a very like accomplished podcast producer. Something that I'm always like learning about is how can I make these conversations more engaging as well. And something that she told me that she did with hers, she has a podcast called Superhumans, and
Yeah.
she would do a 15-minute screening call. And that was something that I took from her. It was like pretty much before every single podcast, even if I ever confirm a guest, I always have a screening call and I have this set of questions that I ask. And that helps me like get excited about the guest, helps me kind of understand what angle are we taking, what's the story that we're doing, what would make their time worthwhile. Because while I do want to get them on my podcast, I have to make sure like, cool, like how can this be worthwhile for this guest? And so like always trying to figure out like how can we keep up with the way somewhat of like audiences now, like what are they into? What do they like to listen to? And I try not to guess too much of that stuff, but I think there's definitely some truth to understanding your audience and what kind of piques their curiosity, because asking for an hour of someone's time is a lot to ask for nowadays. And I just am just trying my best to make it worthwhile. So yeah, the podcast is, I think that's become a little bit less creative compared to the other things I'm doing, but it's still like just having conversations is, I mean, it's like invaluable.
Yeah. Yeah. So in terms of like where you play now, do you play at those PanAm Courts that are down the road that you wonder what they were doing there?
Oh man, like before we were having this, before we hit record and we are talking about like just lack of infrastructure, Austin's kind of got that problem right now. This is just for the time being. People are working on solving that problem, but the PanAm Courts are insane. It's like people always equate it to a slip and slide. It's by the city, and the city won't invest in something that brings genuine joy and people together in a non-violent way. And I guess that really probably just describes what community is, but those courts are like slippery. The courts haven't been resurfaced in God knows how long. And there's like frequently just trash everywhere. The nets are always like pretty dumpy. But what's cool is you can't replicate that. And while that may have been the court I started off at, I don't always play there now, but I did create a video on it. And a lot of people start there, and it's just got this like, I haven't seen an atmosphere and like ambiance similar to PanAm. Just people, yeah, I don't know how to describe it. It's just so many
Good
people
vibe.
like getting along. Yeah, the vibe is just like unmatched. And it's weird because just imagine like a perfectly square box. Half of it is pickleball. The other half can be futsal. It can be roller derby. I've seen bicycle polo, which was insane what those people were doing,
Yeah.
just like talent wise. And yeah, there's always like random things that I've seen like workout classes being held on that surface too. But yeah, long story short, I don't play there as often, but it's definitely like it's still got its charm.
Yeah. Yeah. So where do you play now then? Do you play, it's outdoor courts, I assume?
Yeah, so we don't have any indoor courts yet. They're in the works, but let's see. I usually play at SARC, South Austin Rec Center. That's got 2 permanent nets and six, I think 6 spots for temporary. And that's like another like city neighborhood park that's got like really good. There's been pros who started off there and pros who still go there just to get practice in, but they don't play like open play. But there's like now some pros who've started there, and then some qualifying pros who actually do play like the open play there, which is great. It's got another like, it's fun, it's good. It's not like PanAm in terms of vibe, but it is very good in terms of competition, and that we like run 2 Kings courts, which is also like always great. And let's see, there's some hotel courts. It's funny, they have like a private lock. They have like a coded lock. Basically, like, I don't know who found the code first, but once that person found the code out, it did not take long for like basically the entire pickleball scene to just get in there and like break into that place and play, because it's like three very good courts, and it's there's no open play. It's strictly like bring your own group, and we've seen pros there like Stack Strude when he was here for a tournament, DJ Young, see Zane, Grant Bond, Stefan Alverne. Never seen Jack Monroe there, but I know I've seen him play when I've seen clips. But yeah, some like really good talent goes through there. Again, the infrastructure isn't all there, so there's a lot of like, I'm sure there's a lot of private courts that people go to.
Yeah. Well, I know you're really short across the US, right? I mean, with Pickler opening up, was it 300 or 500 locations? I know what you said, what you described sounds like a dream compared to the UK, but I know that like, that, you know, there's a lot of infrastructure coming, and it's just not enough. They can't build the courts fast enough right now, right? In most places.
Like, there's a lot of demand, and the infrastructure is coming slowly, and you just don't know if you don't really know how long pickleball is going to be around at this rate. And you're like, you like Carl Schmitz has said, crawl, walk, run model, and you just want to be careful.
Mm-hmm. No, okay, that
Yeah.
makes sense. So, like, what's your equipment of choice then at the moment? Like, what paddle are you using? The balls you're using. So, we had I had there's a woman called Thadia Locke, who's the number one women's player, and in the UK, and she went up to the US to play some APP recently, and they were playing durables, and we just don't have durables like in the UK. We don't have, generally that in tournaments it's the Franklin X40s, and like we play a lot indoor balls, so like a lot softer balls generally as well. So the durables, like she was like, oh man, the thing you have to like because they egg like really badly, and like they don't change the ball until the ball splits. So when it eggs, like you got to like, it's kind of a learning process to understand like what's going to happen with that ball. But that's a side story. But you know, if you got, I don't know if you got a comment on that, but also interested like what it is that you like to use right now.
Yeah, I really think those Duraballs are, they need to be fixed or replaced. It's really, unless there's like an intention to having like an intended result, to have intended outcome to having an oblong shaped ball, it's very rudimentary. I can see, I'm sure there's money involved. I'm sure there's businesses involved, but to keep that going is absolutely just like archaic. Like you're talking about advancing the sport and the ball is just not durable, which is weird because it's called Dura and you're like, Dura is indurable and it's not durable by any means.
Uh-huh.
And I get that they're like saying like, oh, well, the opposing competition is Franklin and they're a softer ball. I was like, okay, but can you not make a ball that at least doesn't go egg shaped? And you're starting to see that now. Like Selkirk put out their ball. Honestly, I like that ball a lot. I like the color. It's a muted green and it doesn't crack as easily. I actually haven't cracked a single one yet. And we're talking Austin is basically now at like, I guess like 50, 60 degrees.
Yeah.
It's getting cold. So you're seeing the test of those balls and they don't go oblong. And I do have some gearbox balls. Yola sent me some balls. And then am I missing anyone? I think that's it. But yeah, in terms of equipment, man, I can't stop using the bread and butter filth. Like
Mm-hmm.
Will I think first had put me onto it and I didn't like it at first. And then and then Doug sent me one. And it took me actually forever to unbox because before that, I think I was playing with Volaire and then that got it like started to vibrate. And I was like, oh, it's interesting. I think it's time to move on to maybe I needed a new one because I had been playing with it so long. But I was like, I just want a different paddle. And then that's what brought me to bread and butter filth. And that's just a very specific paddle for me. It's poppy and it's elongated, which I've now realized is what I actually like in a paddle. And I actually just tested. There's these guys from Seattle and San Francisco who came in town. They're here for this tournament and they have a elongated handle. I think it's like, so like most handles, even on elongated paddles, like 5.5 inches. Theirs is like 6 inches or 6.5 or something like that. It's super long. It basically looks like the Pro XR Zay Navratil or Connor Garnett paddle, except their brand is called Speed Up and it's thermoformed. And I actually really, really like that paddle because one, it's elongated and two, it has that pop that I'm looking for. So yeah, it's weird. I've tried the gearbox. I've tried 6-Zero's paddle. I've tried a lot of paddles and they just don't, there's like something missing. They just don't do it for me.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, what about you? What are you using?
Well, I'm using, talking about the $200 paddles, I'm using the Perseus, the Yoda Perseus. So, although I just started playing more with the Scorpius actually, and I prefer that, I think. I'm a retailer for Yola, so like I kind of get them at a different price. But I tell you what I did, like when I first started pickleball, I only started playing like February, and I tried to look for the what that I had no idea like what to get. So I had to look what was the best paddles right online, and I saw the Onyx Z5, and it seemed to be like gets good reviews. It's like top of the list, right? But what I realized, I've been looking at articles that were like 2 years old or whatever, right? 2, 3 years old, and then after I purchased it was in the mail coming to me, and I realized when I was doing more research and really just watching loads of pickleball stuff, I realized, hang on, this paddle might have been good 2 years, 3 years ago, but it's like not the same as what the technology is now. And I thought, I don't know what to get. You know what? I'm just going to go for like Ben Johns is using Yola. Then I'm just going to get the Hyperion, and then I know I've like at least I've got a half decent paddle to work with. So that was my thinking. There was like nothing beyond that. So yeah, that's what I tend to use.
That's cool. That Hyperion, man, what a game changer. Like that paddle really like was the first to, I don't know, just introduce so many things. People really love that paddle. I saw so many of those on the courts, but then the Perseus, it didn't really, I think if anyone else released that same paddle, it wouldn't be as popular. It's only just because Ben Johns has his name on. I'm sure it's like a decent paddle, but you're like, well, there's like a bunch of other paddles very similar to it that don't cost the same price.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So, I mean, I like the Scorpius. Just for me, I think it's like just works better. It just a little bit more control in terms of, having the elongated. I thought like that was where I wanted to go. But like when the ball hits the edge of the paddle more, it's like the smaller sweet spot that there's, because I'm like still like not even 3.5 at best. I don't know. Like who knows over here? Because like we have no idea what rating anybody is. But like yeah, just having that better sweet spot is like better, and I don't feel like it affects like the power that I can get for drives or anything that much. So I just feel more confident like playing with it than the Perseus right now. But
That's awesome. Colin is probably like one of the coolest, most interesting players, skill wise and just personality wise. The guy's like very low key. He's like, I want to get the Scorpius just because of Colin. Like I fangirled when I like talked to him once. I just think that dude is like very interesting. His style of play is like incredible. I love like watching him play.
Yeah. Bread and Butter is another one of those smaller paddle companies that are doing good. Like their marketing is awesome, right? Like compared to like the other stuff, it's low budget or lower budget. You know, that Loco launch, the Loco paddle launch they did just recently, you know, it's just fun.
Yeah,
like it's fun marketing.
Yeah, he's a guru in that respect. Doug Sapusik, he really like the industry is definitely fortunate to have a guy like him who had previously launched a successful company and then has come into pickleball, bringing that experience in. And there's also another thing that he's working on. I can't talk about it, but it's going to be, if he follows through with it, you're just going to laugh because you're like, this is genius marketing again. Like when people talk about bread and butter, I think that's a standout feature. It's just the marketing, which is cool. Like if they were putting out an inferior product, that'd be one thing. But like that paddle, of all the ones I tested, for me personally and just my style of play, like I love that paddle. It's great. I've been playing with it for a while now. Hasn't like delaminated, hasn't deformed, hasn't had any issues. I think like the best thing is like I don't even put any weight on it, and it's just like right out the box. It's exactly for me. But yeah, that guy's marketing is he's like, I eventually had to stop picking up phone calls from him because he would call me all the time and he'd be like, dude, I have this like idea. I have this another idea. And he's just like, yeah, like if anyone needs marketing help, that's your guy to go to because he's thinking literally like outside the box. Like I look at a lot of the paddle companies now. I don't know if they're using the same, just like paddle companies using the same manufacturer or like a warehouse factory. I don't know if they're using the same marketing, but they're just like kind of copying each other. You're like, it just seems like repetitive and redundant.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess they just all follow in the same sort of style, right? Like it's pretty like it's just standard, right? There's nothing too interesting about it. It just does what it does. But yeah, the kind of more viral. I guess it's viral. You got to be careful how you use that word, but it's kind of more viral stuff that bread and butter are interested in doing. But yeah, he's kind of an out there kind of guy, right? He's got a big voice and he's passionate, so that helps too.
A big voice. That's a kind way to put it.
Okay, so just to get your take on something. So obviously we had fun this year with the MLP and the PPA and all of that stuff that happened. So now we've got a joint schedule being announced by PPA MLP for next season. Obviously, the APP still there doing their thing as well. Like, what do you see personally in the future with these tours? Do you think there's space for all of them? Do you think there's somebody who wins? Like, what's your take on that?
Let's see. So we have the PPA, the MLP, APP. I think those are the most dominant tours. There's like NPL and there's some other like PBX, I think, but we just focus on those three. Like APP is certainly doing something. I think for starters, all three of them should be in existence. I think that right now there's this issue where a large organization is trying to monopolize the entire market. And the problem with that is that again comes back to this like point about magic and like like you can't replicate what Ken Herman from APP is doing or Tom Webb, who's the director of the marketing. Like that guy has invaluable experience. He comes from F1. He comes from USA Ski and Snowboard. He comes from Red Bull. He comes from these massive brands and companies. And in a way, like what he's doing is he's now realizing like we're not actually competing with PPA. We're our own entity. We're doing something different, which they're catering to the recreational players, and they're building stories around people that are not pros. And that's also like very interesting. And whether or not that sticks, I don't really know. It's hard because everyone's talking about how the APP isn't broadcasted on YouTube, and you're like, that's a big problem because we don't really know what you're doing. We don't know what's going on. Seeing clips on Instagram isn't sufficient. People do watch on the weekends and they do watch tournaments. I think the competition is great. You see Paris Todd, the Johnson brothers, Rob Nunnery, Day Eskew, Susanna Barr, Megan Fudge. I won't go through like the entire list, but there are very talented people and they come through in the MLP or they come at these like tournaments like nationals and they compete just fine. And it's great because one, it's great for the players. They get competitive pay and salary, because what we do want is we want these people to be able to make a sufficient living, and even beyond sufficient. We want them to have, eventually we want them to have these like lives, these like extravagant, like in a way extravagant lives. They don't have to be showy and flashy, but we do want this like, man, that's what I want to aspire to. The problem is like, I don't want to aspire to be someone who's getting paid the same salary as a teacher. There's nothing wrong with teachers, but they're incredibly undervalued, underpaid. But like, there's nothing really inspiring about that. But if we see people being paid like Tiger Woods, like LeBron James, Kobe Bryant, all those guys, like that is super, super compelling. And then not just to the average person, but to companies as well. Companies are like, oh, that's what I want to buy into. That's who I want marketing this product. So, and then to that PPA and MLP thing, I think that's a very big mistake. Granted, like you have to take my thoughts with a grain of salt because I'm not seeing the back end. But from my perspective, the MLP is a completely different format, and that's okay. Not just the format, but who has the most investors, who has a very diverse set of investors. That's the MLP. There aren't people like Kevin Durant, Tom Brady, Serena Williams, and all these big names investing in the PPA. They're investing in the MLP, and that's what we want. We want those guys. We want the only time I really advocate for top-down approach is when it comes to like word of mouth. Like, I think it's great to have a top-down approach. Like, you want those big names to be talking about pickleball. We want them to be like fascinated by it. But if the PPA is buying out the MLP with the intentions of closing down that organization, that's just a big mistake. The PPA is known for what it's known for. Not that it can't shift, but it's known for what it's known for. And also, like, the PPA is just that it's an ongoing, like, seasonal organization. Like, it just happens kind of year round. But the MLP, that's just another event not just another event, that is an event that people look forward to. People travel to those just to spectate. People don't travel to PPA just to spectate. Most of them are playing, and that's okay too. Like, create a thriving environment for the people who love playing to play. Like, I think PPA has way bigger problems to worry about than the competition of MLP. Like fix your playing atmosphere and experience for the people that are paying this money, because there are way too many people upset about it.
Yeah.
And this isn't like they're not just being upset to be upset. It is a poor experience. And granted, these are growing pains, not knocking PPA at all. Like they're certainly trying their best, but to think that buying out organizations or trying to like just throw money at things is the way to go about it, I don't think is the way. There are certainly creative people to hire for these roles, but to just like, I don't know if, see, the thing is like, I don't know what their intention is with buying out MLP or like coming to some settlement and agreement. But do I think like splitting the players up is right? No. Like, I think the MLP players should play in the PPA, which I believe Steve Kuhn said at the time that that's what he wants. He's like, hey, I don't care. Like, just show up for MLP, but play PPA as well. And like, there also is an argument that players shouldn't be playing that often. Is that true? Is that really an issue? Like, that's what you signed up for. There are NBA players and MLB players playing much more frequently than that.
Mm-hmm.
And like, if you have a family, I understand, but like, it's not any different from if you were to take on like an entrepreneurial route, which is somewhat what you are. Is like, you don't want to be an independent contractor. You want to be like an entrepreneur of your to your own degree. So at the end of the day, like, the competition is good. You want that competition because it results in like more pay for the players, but also like just leveling the experience. If you see someone who's doing something better, then that should propel you to do it better, not try to throw money at them to buy it out. It's like, come up with your own solution, and your own solution should be unique to the scenario, and that you just forge your own path. But yeah, it's so difficult to really talk on because, you see the guy Tom Dundon and you hear like the guy is trying to create a strong revenue stream for the organization. But from what I've heard is that the only cash flow positive organization under that entire umbrella of his like conglomerate is, I think, Pickleball Central. So it's so difficult. It's like, how do you get your money back in a way and not just like burn through cash? And that's just not something that I have a lot of experience to speak on. But just from my perspective on the whole scenario, yeah, it's just an interesting time, like, to be in the sport. You want to keep everything grassroots, but you also want things to grow because they have deals and obligations they have to oblige to. They have that deal with Amazon and everything. And at the end of the day, Amazon doesn't care how you do it. Just get them the results that they want.
Yeah. That's really interesting. I didn't even think about it being on the cards that the MLP might be bought out and the owners might be bought out. So that's kind of interesting in its own right. I mean, I totally agree. The PPA and the MLP, like, it feels like they shouldn't be under one banner. But I guess as well they're trying to save costs from, like, event hire is expensive. They're trying to save costs by like kind of sharing that load, which kind of makes sense. But for me, I think you're right. I think as well, for me, it's like making the game a spectator sport. And that's like, so people turn up and pay for tickets, like at the venue, they want to come and watch it, but also for television. Like, there's this like belief that pickleball isn't good for TV. Like, I just don't believe that. I love watching it on TV. And I think, okay, like there's, generally pickleball, there's like, at least in the UK, right? And I still think it's the same in the US. It's a lot of older generations that have been watching it. And they're not so savvy with watching like streaming services or just streaming on YouTube and stuff like that. I think making the production where people want to come and see it in person, like the people do tennis, want to watch it on the television. For me, that feels like the revenue streams that's going to make the money, that's going to be able to fund the organization. And working on that, I think, feels to me. Of course, I don't have the inner workings and understanding either, but for me, that feels like something that's scalable.
Yeah, I agree. Like spend money on production. And they hired, like, there was this guy, this creative director, his name is Jake Lewis, and I think he's no longer like necessarily fully associated with them, but like he was largely responsible for the way the production looks and the way like everything, the design and just how everything looks. But even just the production on just like the camera quality, you're like, why am I watching this it's like any game that's not on championship court kind of has the fidelity of like a
Yeah.
remote call, like a Zoom call. You're like, this is insane. Like,
Yeah.
you want the sport to grow, but if anyone turns this on and sees this, this is like in a way unacceptable. And you guys do bear that responsibility. And I understand like that's probably incredibly difficult to have to travel to every single event, like weekend after weekend, and you're shutting stuff down, bringing it back up. But also, like, Tom Dundon's not like unfamiliar with how this works. The guy owns the North Carolina Hurricanes, and it's not, and you just need to find the right people to make this happen. But there's that. And like going back to your point about making a spectator sport, one of my biggest gripes with MLP is how they keep redrafting and they keep like switching Premier and Challenger. You're like, this is insane. In what world does that make? Well, okay, I'm probably like, okay, I'm getting a little like too emotional about it, but in my like perspective, how am I, if I'm a fan of, let's see, the DC pickleball team, how am I supposed to stay loyal to them if you guys keep switching the players? And also, I have no, if I'm a casual fan, I have no idea what Challenger and Premier really means. And I don't think they do either, because if teams are switching between them, what is the distinction? Like, what is the actual distinction between them? But yeah, the way they keep redrafting is like ridiculous. Like, how am I, like, why do I really watch why do people watch like most sports teams? They like gravitate usually to a player or like a hometown, something like that. And you usually like rooting for like players who have been on the team, or like you just have loyalty to what they've built. But if you keep rebuilding it, then there's nothing to be loyal to.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I might be wrong, but like my understanding with the whole Challenger Premier thing was that they were going to run 2 seasons. So all the teams in Premier were going to do that. And then all the teams were going to go into Challenger. And it was going to be based on like results as to who would finally get picked in season 3 to be in Premier and Challenger. So I thought that was how it was going to work. That then it was going to be a permanent thing after season 2. And then I know they were fixing something with the drafts, right? Where I think teams were they were talking about like even, which I don't think is going to happen, like players moving to a specific location and training together and all those kind of things. So I think they had plans at some point to like address those things. But yeah, so I think it would have been like, how many points you had at the end of 2 seasons would be like determine which division you win. So I think it felt like there was quite a lot on the line for the owners to like make sure that like they got that right and that happened. But like now, like if we're going to get emotional about like how they should be structuring that, like one of the most exciting things that I thought about when I saw MLP was that they were going to have promotion and relegation, because I don't know if you ever watched soccer, but like the English Premier League and all of English soccer, every division has promotion and relegation, and that's like one of the things that makes it so compelling, is because even the teams at the bottom are fighting for something, and it's real, right? So you go down a division, all the players' wages go down, your sponsorships go down, like it's something you don't want to be. So now, like I think if you saw like the announcement of the new schedule, it's going to be more like a NFL style division. So you can have team divisions with 4 teams in each, and then like a playoffs like you do with kind of NFL. But again, all the teams end up starting over again the next year. There's no impact to them finishing last in their division. They just go again and they get a better pick in the draft the next year or whatever. Yeah, promotion and relegation was like such a big thing for me, but I understand that's not appealing to the owners of the business, the teams that don't want to be the team in the challenger division that's getting less money and less interest. So I can see that, but for me, that was a miss. Like, I think I had it right first time around.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah. Again, so that just speaks to my ignorance on this like whole topic. Like I wasn't like fully aware of how all that works, but I mean, I'm very like, I think people are calling me a peacekeeper. So I'm always going to like give like devil's advocate kind of like perspective, but like pickleball has the opportunity to do what other sports aren't. So like the way you're talking about it and the information you provided that I wasn't fully aware of before is like, that's great. In many respects it is, because it's like we can forge our own path, right? Like we don't have to follow the model that other sports are. And yeah, I think it's interesting. It's like, cool, like do it how you want. And I guess it just comes down to right now, the sport is in growing pains again. And it probably will be for a while, because it just means people are trying things out, which is great.
Yeah. Yeah. I will still watch it. It's still fun.
Yeah.
Okay. So you talk to a lot of people through your podcast, just in general, probably now that you've kind of become more established in the space. Like, what is it you see happening in pickleball over the next 12, 24 months? Like, is there anything that you see coming that you're excited about?
Let's see. I'm trying to think of like what are some of the biggest things like that you usually see. Well, like what affects most people's like everyday like playing experience. Probably going to see more facilities. Again, I'm going to share like both sides of the coin. You're going to see a lot of facilities, but you're also going to see a lot of people who don't understand how to operate a facility right, properly. A lot of people get into the sport because they love it, but do they love the idea of business? Do they love the idea of learning how to operate things at any scale and operating it properly and correctly? So I've talked to a lot of founders and business owners, and they're like, yeah, you're going to see a lot of these franchises appear, but they're going to be run by people who just love the game, but they don't love business and they don't understand business. So that is pretty dangerous, because you're going to see people faulting on debts, which isn't great. That could also be a very bear perspective, which it's kind of always easy to come up with a bear perspective, but not on a bull perspective, it's going to give more opportunity for investors. People are going to be like, cool, if it works, then I want to buy into it, or I can take over it. Like, there are going to be experienced people who are sitting back and they're like, let's watch this unfold. And then I think paddle companies, gosh, someone mentioned it. There's like over 350 new paddle companies coming into the new year. I can just look at that as just saturation, a lot of saturation. And it's very rare to meet people like Dale Young, who are like innovating, like Rafael Filippini, who's innovating. Not saying that their products are the best, but these are people who do understand engineering, do understand composites. They do understand how to develop and design a product, and they're doing it from a more technical perspective. And then on the flip side, you have people who are just picking from a catalog, and that can sometimes resonate with people too. And so it's going to cater, it's going to be everywhere. But I can definitely see power from the people I've spoken to and the prototypes I've tested. Power is going to be a huge thing, and I'm very intrigued to see like how that affects the game. I think like bangers, if you will, they're going to come back in, and you're going to start to see a lot more like educational content on YouTube being like, how do we solve this problem of bangers? And that's going to shift. You're going to see the gameplay shift. You see all these younger cats like Jack Monroe and I don't know how old Roscoe Bellamy is, but they played against the Johns at Nationals. They won a game against them. Granted, Ben did roll his ankle. And speaking from experience, that's not great. But he did roll his ankle. He beat them. I don't know why the match was like a 3 out of 5, but the Johns beat them for the first 2 games. But you are still seeing these young cats like Wyatt Stone, Hayden Patriquin, and guys who have been in the scene for a little while, but like younger kids, because it's coming through college as well. And you're starting to see like it's great because the sport's being introduced and aware at younger ages. So you're starting to see like younger kids like, oh man, this is not only like incredibly fun, but I can be like some of these athletes. And again, this goes back to the that topic of like kids need something to aspire to besides just like, I hate to say it, but they have to like aspire to something besides just fun. And unfortunately, the world we live in is that money is a huge motivation. When they realize once they have the money, they realize like it wasn't actually all about the money, but initially from like that, like a beginner's eye, like the money is very compelling. So when the sport has that, it makes it very interesting, right? Like you like you want that lavish lifestyle. You want to be able to provide for your family. You want to be able to like buy your dream car. You want people to have those dreams. And so there's like the paddle stuff. Be interesting to see how these leagues turn out. Like some people didn't show up at that USA Nationals, which is like very interesting. So I think you're going to see like a lot more athletic players. Just see more tennis players coming into the sport, which is cool. Like they're introducing a different style of gameplay. And what else is happening? Like businesses are getting more creative as far as what they can offer, which is great for people like us, the consumer, because it brings prices down. Like for a while, it's been paddles, but then people are coming out with more accessories like grips, lead tape. I think lead tape is not a huge financial burden to begin with because you just buy lead tape from Dick's, like a sporting goods store, and you just buy it for like the sake of golf. Like golfers have been using it for a long time, I guess. Hopefully content creation becomes like just more interesting and creative. I don't know. What do you think?
I think all of that. Wow, you're being interviewed now, Ryan. You don't have to ask me the questions, but yeah, I mean, in terms of, for me in the UK, like there's so much like that's just got to follow in the footsteps of what you're doing in the US, and I guess there's going to be lessons that are learned from doing business and starting things up in the US that we can kind of learn from and not make the same mistakes. But like I was saying before we started recording, we don't have courts yet. We're just playing on badminton courts. Like there's not really a proper pro scene by any means at the moment. So people still have day jobs. They do. There's not really any money in sport in that respect yet. But it's coming. It's definitely coming. You can feel the groundswell. There's lots of stuff happening, and it's growing everywhere. The number of players attending tournaments, the number of tournaments, the number of events that are taking place. There's word of facilities that are in progress. So it's coming. It's just in the UK. We're just quite far behind, and I'm just looking forward to 12, 24 months down the road when we've got some better places to play and just things are more established, really.
Yeah, hopefully, like it's interesting because you're in the UK and you talking about like the infrastructure not being there. Hopefully, that's something within the next like 1 to 2 years that's changed. It's pickleball just having a more global presence, like international presence, because there's no doubt that there's talented people like you said that I already forgot her name, but Thadia, like she came over to the States and you're like, she's the only thing separating the international players against like the US based players is really just location. The skill wise, they're just as competitive. There's guys in Australia like Joey Wild, Mitch Hargreaves, and There's like I think there's like a Taiwanese based pro as well. There's like a female pro who like came to the States to practice. But yeah, and then also just hopefully more of these people staying, right? They had those like stats within the past year where they're like, oh, like 38 million people played. That's great. Like, how do we make sure that they stay? And I think that's also a problem to address. It's a good problem to have, but it's also like, how do we make it stick? How do we make sure that that they don't just pick up a paddle and then that's the last time that they play for the first? How do we make sure that the first time they play isn't the last time that they play?
Okay. So what plans do you have for building pickleball over the next 12, 24 months? Is there anything you can share that you're working on? Or is it still new enough that you haven't kind of figured that stuff out yet?
Man, how much time do we have? I'm gonna go on another. I'm gonna go on another long one. As you can tell, I'm not great at. I haven't yet figured out how to distill things down more concisely. But let's see. So I have my like podcast. I did some like vlogs. I did like this series called Places. And I just keep getting like inspiration from outside the industry. And something I'm trying to do. So I had this like vlogs and just travel things, but my coach, Greg Souders from Standard Jiu-Jitsu, inspired me. He's always inspired me. And mostly it's his way of thinking and teaching. And it was applied to me when I was fighting, but because I was fighting, I didn't really understand what was happening. And now I'm starting to become more curious about it. And I've created a couple videos in an educational series that applies some of the principles that he taught me. And again, this comes down to me these ideas being absent in the space. A problem that I see with the educational aspect of YouTube content creators and just in general in pickleball is that people are just teaching techniques, that people are just showing you, this is how to hit a third shot drop. This is how to hit a third shot drive. This is how to dink. And they're teaching skills in isolation. But the thing is that those aren't even skills per se. They're techniques. And the thing is, like, skill isn't performed in a vacuum. And I've shown in videos that we need context. So what I'm getting at is my coach had been applying this thing called the ecological approach. And he'd been applying it, right? And he's become now I don't know the right word for it, but he's become very well known in the industry, in the sport of jiu-jitsu and amongst coaches and athletes, because he shifted the way people look at developing skill. And it comes from, like a few other people, Rob Gray, obviously like the very beginning people, it's like Nikolai Bernstein and like James Gibson. And a lot of it comes from motor learning. And the thing is that I see in pickleball coaching is people are just regurgitating information. They're just like kind of telling people what they've heard, or they're taking anecdotal experience without it being research-based, without it being applied in multiple settings. And I don't think something I don't think something can be truly valuable if it can't really be applied to multiple settings, because then you're not really like solving a problem. And so I guess what I'm getting at is I'm trying to like fill this void of how pickleball is being taught using this ecological approach, using what I've learned from my coach. And I still have conversations with him on the phone regularly because I'm still learning this, but I'm trying to provide it to more people, because a problem I'm seeing is also people are plateauing. People don't understand. They think that the game is just a series of movements, but it's not. The game is problem solving. The ecological approach is based on
Yeah.
the relationship of a performer or a learner with the environment. Skill is not something innate. It's not something that's just within us. Skill is based on our perception of the environment, and our environment provides us affordances. Affordances isn't a term that's specific to ecological approach. Affordances was a term I learned even in design. Affordances just means of opportunities for action. You look at a mug, we all know just by looking at this mug that this is just a handle. Like, you don't look at it like it's not like something that like an innate skill. Like, again, like you look at it, you go into a building you've never seen before, or you're entering a building you've never seen before. You see a door handle, that's an affordance. It tells you what opportunities are there.
Yeah.
So the thing is, like, I came out with this video on ball machines because I think that's such an ineffective way to teach people how to develop a skill. And people think that like doing rote repetition is how you develop a skill, but that's just simply the least effective method. And I like put this video out, and just people just didn't understand. They're just like, oh, well, I've learned how to do like, I learned how to do my drive but I'm like, the skill isn't just being able to perform the movement. The skill is being able to recognize what's happening and being able to problem solve and being able to adapt to the scenario and that specific situation. My coach would always tell me this term, or this like phrase. He would say, situations dictate tactics.
Mm-hmm.
The thing about the ball machine is, all the research that I looked into is that ball machines fail to help us develop a skill because we're looking at the wrong thing. It's not about just like getting the ball. It's about these, they call it pre-context cues. It's like, what is our opponent showing us? They're showing us a paddle face. They're showing us a movement with their body. And that's actually that information that we're picking up. So yeah, I'm trying to work on this educational series. And again, like, another thing is like the static drilling where people's just feeding you balls. That's not, they have this term in ecological approach called representative design. And really, your practice should be as closely representative to live gameplay as possible. That's not saying every practice session should be treated as a match. What it's saying is that your partner, your practice partner, your opponent should not be cooperative. They shouldn't just be feeding you a ball, because that's not what happens in a live game. What happens in a live game is you have live resistance. And there's just I say that because I'm going to end up coming up with some practice design videos to help people understand, like, what's a better use of your time? Is it someone just feeding you a ball, or is it putting you in a scenario, in a situation that you experience in live gameplay, or it might not be representative of live gameplay, but you are understanding how to problem solve. I think that's a problem right now, is that people are plateauing because they think the game is just a series of movements, but it's, to be an advanced player, you're solving problems. You're constantly solving problems, and just movement itself is a problem you have to solve. Rafael Nadal, there's like a famous quote about him saying, like, speaking to rote repetition and just saying, like, no ball is exactly the same that you receive. Neither is your swing. The general like movement is probably very similar, but there's way too many possibilities. There's over 20,000 different possibilities of how a movement could be executed just based on muscles, like your body positioning, muscles, nerves, everything. Like, everything comes into account, right? Like, you could be fatigued, you could be tired, you could have just be experience like performance stress, things like that. So there's just a lot of different factors that are into play. So there's that. And then I am just trying to find more creative ways to make content engaging and fun for me to create. If it's fun for me to create and edit, then I have a good like amount of certainty that it's going to be fun to watch. So, yeah, that's my soapbox again. That's probably
Yeah.
like my third or fourth soapbox that I've been on.
Now that sounds really interesting. So that's something you're working on right now, right?
Yeah, it's difficult because I'm still trying to learn it as well. So I'm like reading books, watching, or like reading articles. I need to talk to my coach because he is very well versed in it. It's crazy the amount of podcasts he's been put on because he basically broke the system of like, we don't drill. Like they don't drill. They don't drill. Common thing in jiu-jitsu is you start a class with a 15-minute warm up. Throw that right out the window. That's ridiculous. And then they'll show you like a move, like everyone probably familiar term is a rear naked choke. So they'll be like, hey, here's a rear naked choke. Here's how to do it. You can practice it for like 20 minutes, and then we'll go into live situational sparring.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing for pickleball right now, right? They just show you a technique, but is there really a right technique? Is what I'm showing you right for every individual? The idea behind the ecological approach is to promote self-organization, to promote exploration. You want to tell people maybe like what they're looking for. You want to tell people why they're doing it, but you don't want to show them how. You want them to organize themselves around it and them to figure that solution out on themselves because they've done the research on like, why do people choke under pressure? Why are people clutch under pressure? Why does pressure not affect some people? And they did also find like there's good research behind the fact that if you're told how to do something through explicit instruction, those people tend to choke under pressure. They try to think about like how their body movement is like, as opposed to this external focus. There's so many different factors, but it's so like fascinating just understanding motor learning, right? Like I'm almost certain 90% of the people who are showing pickleball content, educational content, don't understand motor learning. They don't understand what they're preaching. They understand from an anecdotal perspective, they understand like what they're doing, but it's like, how can you relay this information to multiple people and it be the most effective and it be applicable to the widest audience? But like, imagine trying to tell Riley Newman, this is how you hit a drop shot with a single arm. That guy self-organized and found his own solution that is fit for him because everyone varies in size, right? Everyone varies in size, weight, uh, physical
Reach or,
capabilities.
yeah.
But that guy hits like a two-hand with everything. He also uses a pancake. So yeah, it's a lot of people want to emulate what the top pros are doing. And that works to a certain degree. But I think they're missing what is actually happening. What is actually like, what is the problem that I'm solving? And
Yeah.
how can I like adapt myself to those scenarios?
Yeah. Well, that's really interesting. I really look forward to what you produce on that. So, yeah. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
I think we're about an hour and a half now. I think it's a good time to wrap it up. But thanks for the conversation. It's been really, really interesting. I've really enjoyed it, and I think we've signified a little bit here why interview based stories are interesting. I've really enjoyed hearing your story and what you're up to. So, for people who want to follow you and understand what it is that you're doing and want to follow along, like where's the best places for them to go?
Yeah. First off, just want to say thank you for this opportunity and thank you for taking the time to do this. I know it's very difficult in the early stages when you're starting and pursuing an idea. And I've seen your channel, and these things like take time. Like, again, delayed gratification, right? Like you see the videos and the amount of time an effort does not necessarily equate to what you receive in terms of like viewership and things like that in the early stages. So I appreciate you taking the time to do this and giving up an hour and a half of your time. It obviously sounds like you have children too. So to be able to do that while you have kids means a lot. As far as like how to find out more about what I'm doing and reach out to me, to really get a sense of what I'm doing, go to youtube.com/@buildingpickleball. You can also just go into the search bar and search Building Pickleball. There's various playlists and different types of content. Like I just came back from the 6-0 event where it was like a release event. And then there's, of course, the podcast interviews and just other like fun, creative videos. And of course, the educational series. And if you want to reach out to me, if you have any questions, if there's anything I can help you out with, granted, it might take a while. It took me like 6 days or more to get back to Mark. So I apologize about it. Sometimes I just get overwhelmed, but just reach out to me on Instagram at Building Pickleball. And I usually share a lot of updates. Every now and then I'll put in the occasional like ridiculous meme, but I try to provide updates on like what's going on and try to connect with everyone and just make sure that you're aware of what's happening. But yeah, those are probably the 2 best ways.
Okay. Well, thanks very much again, Brian. It's been great speaking to you, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah, man. Likewise. Thank you. And you too. Have a great weekend.
Thank you. Bye-bye.